Hey folks, thanks for tuning in to this podcast. We're running the Bleacher Report. Top 100, we are actually at number 25. We're going to go from 25 to 12 today. You got your boy Eric here and our buddy Zach. We're going to be talking about all sorts of goodness in this these 13 picks. There's a lot of interesting stuff here. If you have not heard our podcast before, please subscribe. We've done, like I said, from 100 all the way to 25. So you can catch the previous episodes and kind of get caught up with this wonderful list of the top 100 from Bleacher Report. So let's start off. Zach, say hi.
Hello, everyone. What's up?
We're going 25. We're coming right out of the gate. And one of my favorite, most overrated players that I will get crap for of all time is Mr. Scottie Pippen. I'm going to read my notes. My notes are pretty funny. Right off the bat, I said, I can't stand him. 25 is way too high, and here's why. He's not a leader. Didn't get it done without Jordan, really. I know someone's going to say, oh, well, they made the playoffs so the next year after that. But, you know, when it came time for crunch time, he wasn't there, and I'll explain that here in a second. He didn't get it done in Portland. He didn't get it done in Houston. And both of those teams are kind of stacked, too. So he should have elevated his game to get further into, you know, to win a championship. Couldn't do it without Jordan, and that was obvious. 6 with Jordan, none without him. He quit on his Bulls team in the playoffs because he wasn't getting the ball for the last play of the game, which I thought was pretty weak. You know, the coach draws up the play. If the play's not going to you, you know, make a concerted effort to be a part of the team and a part of the play to make it successful. It's not about you. It's about winning the game. And when you're in the playoffs, everyone counts. Now, honestly, the good stuff, because I can't just shit on Scottie Pippen. His defense was unbelievable. Maybe probably one of the better small forward defenders in the 80s and 90s. He could shut you down if he wanted to, and he did. Ton of first team all Ds also, which proves my point right there. His averages are great too. I mean, he had some pretty strong seasons for sure. His ultimate season was 22 points, 8.7 rebounds, 7 assists a game, and 2.9 steals. Also 1.2 blocks a game, which I thought was pretty interesting. His career numbers are kind of thin for somebody at 25, in my opinion. 16 points a game, 6.4 rebounds, 5.2 assists. I would have liked to seen those numbers up a little bit higher. Yes, he did play with Jordan, but when you think about this supporting cast on most of those teams, there wasn't a lot of scorers. There was plenty of opportunities for Sky to score. I remember a lot of the games you'd see in the box score, he'd be like 3 for 14, 6 for 22. And that's kind of why you got that 16-point average right there. Zach, what are your thoughts on Mr. Scottie Pippen?
Scottie Pippen, he's a little complicated for me, but I'm with you. I think he's way too high. When I just think Scottie Pippen, I don't think top 25 best players of all time. And when I think top 25, I think of somebody that I want to build a team around. You know what I mean? And Scottie Pippen doesn't come to mind when it comes to building a team. And I don't know if it's because he was Robin to Batman for so many years, but I'm with you on him not really performing outside of Jordan. And here's one thing. When Michael Jordan left for baseball or whatever, I just don't feel like Scottie took advantage of the situation. His numbers didn't really go up very much. I feel like he didn't embrace being the guy that year, and he didn't really seem capable of it.
Kind of like he wanted to be the guy when Jordan was there, but then when he had the opportunity to be the guy, he's like, oh, I don't want to be the guy. That kind of vibe. I think, I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah, and I mean, I know Pippen's one of the 2 NBA players to record 5 steals, 5 blocks in a playoff game, and all that stuff's great, but to lead a team in all 5 major stats, I think he did that the year Jordan was gone, but still the points didn't go up. And when he got traded to Houston, his numbers dropped dramatically, and he got more minutes in Houston, which I found interesting. He played about 3 or 4 minutes a game in Houston, and his numbers dropped from 20 a game in Chicago down to 14 in Houston.
Now, was that Barkley? Barkley was on that team, right?
Yeah, that was Fat Barkley era and Olajuwon. But I mean, that team, it really was trash. I think their starting point guard was like Matt Maloney or Brent Price or something.
Didn't they try to replace Drexler with him, essentially, right?
Yeah, because Drexler just left,
Right.
and then Pippen comes in,
Right.
and they didn't have Kenny Smith, Sam Cassell, or any of those like really solid point guards
In the mid '90s, right?
Yeah, they had like Brent Price and Matt Maloney.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah, and
But still, if you're a guy of Pippen's caliber, you should be able to pick up the slack. For some of those guys being gone, if you were such an important, top 25 player,
yeah,
shouldn't you be able to pick up that slack?
yeah, and especially look, I know people will say, well, he's getting older or whatever. He's like 32 at the time, and it's like if you're playing alongside Jordan, and you get your opportunity just a year later after you're averaging 20 to go to a team where you're basically being demanded to score a lot. Like Barkley wasn't Barkley anymore. Akeem was kind of on the way out. And then your other guards are Michael Dickerson, Brent Price, and rookie Katino Mobley. Like, you need to step in, be a leader, and like score.
Yeah, exactly.
And that locker room that year was kind of toxic. Like him and Barkley were beefing all the time. And I'm not saying Pippen's a locker room problem, but I feel like maybe just so many years in the triangle, he was like frustrated, and it's almost like he checked out.
I'd agree with you on that.
Yeah,
I would completely agree with you on that.
And
then he
then
went to Portland right after that.
Yeah, he only spent 1 year in Houston. Houston kind of went above and beyond to get Pippen, and then he goes to Portland and his numbers drop even more. I think he averaged like 12 a game, and then the following year 10. I mean, and that Blazer team, they were a little bit more talented. You had like Stoudemire, Rashid, Steve Smith, Sabonis, Detlef Schrempf.
And that was a team that went to the finals, right? Or almost the finals.
They didn't go to the finals. They lost to the
Lakers.
Spurs or Lakers?
No, it was the Lakers.
It was Lakers, yeah. They lost to that team, but I don't know. Just he's not the type that I want to build a team around, and I feel like if you're in the top 25, you have to be like one of those guys. Like, we're gonna build around you.
Well, and I think what's going to be interesting, and I think we kind of feel the same way about this player for number 24, and it's kind of like. It's kind of almost the same thing. So 24 is Dr. J, right? And I mean, Dr. J in my mind was a game changer. That crazy, slam dunk contest. He was the first guy who did it from the foul line, and then that one layup that he had around the basket, behind the basket. I mean,
amazing shot.
Everybody thinks about that. You still see those highlights, right?
Yeah.
Really, probably some of the sweetest moves before Jordan. But I feel like as time goes on, he kind of moves down these lists, if you've noticed more and more. I mean, if we were looking at this, let's say it was Bleacher Report 1999, I feel like Dr. J's in the top 10. Do you see what I'm saying? Now he's 24. I feel like in the next 5 years, with Durant, depending on how Durant comes off of the injury, and some of the other people, like maybe, where do you put Harden or Westbrook? I could see Dr. J falling down to 30, which I couldn't even imagine 10, 15 years ago.
Right.
I also feel like his game didn't age well. You know what I mean? Like when you're looking at, NBA nowadays. He put up some great numbers. He put up better numbers than Pippen, so I'm really glad he's ahead of Pippen. His career averages were 22 points, 6.7 rebounds, 3.9 assists. He had 1.5 blocks, too, which I thought was interesting because you don't see a lot of small forward shooting guards with a lot of blocks. It's more your power forward centers. So to average 1.5, that's pretty impressive. And his ultimate season, he had 26.9 points, 8.5 rebounds, 4.8 assists, and I think that's pretty impressive too. Those are solid numbers. That's why I'm glad he's ahead of Pippen. But just for the things I said before, I just feel like he's one of those guys where it's going in the opposite direction. Unlike a Paul Pierce, where I think in the next 5 years Pierce will start going the other direction, and I think Pierce is actually going to pass Jay in the next probably 5 years.
Yeah, and I'm good at this pick. I was actually a little bit surprised that it was this low, to be honest, just with how much people love Julius Erving. But the thing that bothers me about this list again is that Bleacher Report says the ABA stats don't count. They kind of shit on Artis Gilmore before, and I mean they kind of praise Julius for his ABA stats, but they say they don't count. And if they don't count, if those ABA stats don't count, he's not in the top 25.
Right.
Like, look at his NBA numbers. Like, there's so many dudes averaging, like, the same numbers. I know he's got that title, but he wasn't even the finals MVP. Moses Malone was. Like, that. I know Dr. J was, like, the face of that franchise, but that was Moses Malone's team. I mean, he's averaging, like, 24 and 15 or something like that. So, if you're not going to count the ABA stats, the NCAA accomplishments or the gold medals, and you end up with a shitty list like this. Because, like, Dr. J, if he shouldn't even be top 25 if they're not going to count his ABA list.
Where would you put him if he was only an ABA player?
Only an ABA?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. I mean, he's like a top 15
right
as far as ABA, because he had a couple MVPs in the ABA. He's got 2 titles in the ABA.
Right.
And I think there's a season he averaged like 30 and 15 in the ABA. Like his rebounding numbers were insane. In the
you
ABA.
can almost say a guy like Dr. J is the reason why they brought over some of the ABA teams to the NBA.
Yeah.
When you think about it, like he's one of those guys where the NBA is looking at the ABA going, okay, you know what? It's not a joke league. Like there's some legitimate superstars in this league. You know, we need to get these guys over here. It's kind of like the NFL and the USFL, like back in the day where they thought the USFL was a joke league, and then they started realizing, well, no, this league is actually kind of legit. And what ends up happening, you know, the NBA absorbs the ABA, so there's not competition.
Right.
Just like the same thing with, you know, the NFL didn't absorb the USFL, but a lot of their players jump ship over to the NFL, and then you start losing that quality of the game.
Yeah. Because, I mean, let me ask you this. When you look at his numbers in the NBA, do you think he's a top 25 player, just
No,
in your opinion?
I don't. And I remember him towards the end of his career, he kind of went south pretty fast.
Yeah, like he didn't have much of like a jump shot, really.
Right.
And, in that finals, he was the 3rd leading scorer on his team. It was Moses Malone and Andrew Toney.
That was 83, right? Or was it 84?
Man, I don't remember what year.
This is why we need an intern.
I want to say it's 82, 83, something like that.
Right.
But either way, it's just like to be top 25, and if the ABA doesn't count, like Bleacher Report says, you're the 3rd leading scorer in that finals. Your numbers are, you know, solid, but not mind-blowing in the NBA, then you're not this high on the list.
Well, and he was done 4 years after that. That's why I was asking if it was 83, 84, because 87 he was done.
Yeah.
You know, and it was obvious he needed to be done in 87.
Right.
You know, which is interesting because it doesn't give him that long of a career.
Yeah.
You know, when you think about it. So if you know, Bleacher Report saying he played from 76 to 87, that's only an 11-year career.
Yeah.
And if you're not playing good in 87, I remember that. I remember the whole tour. You know, he did the whole farewell tour, which is interesting. They put you at like what, 9 solid years?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's not. I don't believe it was injury.
No, it was just
Slowing down.
And you know, when you play the way he did with all the dunking, and you know,
it's going to take a toll on your knees. Take a toll.
It's going to take a toll. But let me ask you this.
Sure.
Do you think Julius Erving, and count his ABA career?
Yeah.
Do you think he was that good? Do you think he's a little bit overrated? Do you think he's just like cool, kind of like some of these or early 2000s guys, where
like a Vince Carter, Tracy McGrady type of vibe?
Yeah, somebody that's just flashy.
You know what? I could say he probably is the guy that brought the flashy, like, to that next level again. You know what I mean? Where,
right.
Yeah, it's hard because if you look at his numbers don't scream superstar to me. You know what I mean? I think he had the cool nickname. I think a lot of people got behind him. You know, I think he's the bridge to Jordan.
Yeah.
To be like, I think he's the bridge, and then it's like him and then Magic. Jordan basically is what I think. So, yeah, I mean, and like I said, this is one of those things where as the career goes, you know, not the career, but the years go on, I don't want to say he's getting exposed, but I think it's more like you're starting to realize that, you know, he might not have put up those, you know, and not having a jump shot for the most part. That's the thing that differentiated Jordan from him.
Yeah.
Jordan actually developed a really good jump shot.
A great post game.
Amazing post game, because he knew he wasn't going to be able to go into the paint and drive, especially against those Pistons teams. And let's face it, like the Knicks and the Celtics also really protected the rim, right?
Yeah.
There's no way. I mean, you started seeing that with Jordan in probably 89, 90,
right.
where his game started changing, and Doc doesn't do that. So is that on the player? You know, not recognizing that he's got to change his game because the game's changing?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a great point.
And for me, just to wrap up Julius Erving here, for me, I have to look outside of the NBA to rank Julius, because if you don't, I mean, he might not even be my top 50 if you just go based off of NBA. That's just pure, you know, name and like being cool if you're going to go by NBA. But like, I got to look at college where he averaged 20 points, 20 rebounds. I got to go to the ABA where he's a 3-time MVP and 2-time ABA champ. Like, I have to look at that part of the resume to put him here. So Bleacher Report has totally fucked this one up.
Speaking of, no, actually, I actually think this next one, I think it's kind of, he's perfectly placed here. John Stockton at 23. I got mixed emotions about Stockton. Him and Malone are like peanut butter and jelly, in my opinion. You can't think of one without the other, and I really think they both contributed to each other's success. I mean, that pick and roll that they ran, it was really unstoppable. He was, in my opinion, though, Stockton was kind of a dirty player. He got away with a lot, great shooter, automatic mid-range, tough as nails. I'll give him that for sure. He's like one of those guys that doesn't look like he belonged in that time period, right? Like when you think about like 80s and 90s players, you don't think of like, Stockton. You don't, but he hung. He might be the best point guard of the last 30 years, as crazy as to say that.
Yeah.
His assist numbers are crazy, especially in his prime. I also thought he was really underrated as a defensive player too. He was kind of like almost like a Rodman, like at point guard.
Yeah.
He really got under the opposing point guard's skins. I think 23 is actually almost perfect for him.
Yeah, I do too. I'm still not sure if I put him over Julius. Again, if we count ABA stats and everything. But I like the placement for him. I'm just not sure if I like the order of it. Just I don't know, but he was incredible. The pick and roll, like you said, was deadly. And he was so consistent over the years. Like, even at age 40, he still, I think, was averaging like 8 assists. I mean, his whole career he basically led that Jazz team the whole year. And I'm not sure if there's a Karl Malone without a John Stockton,
I agree.
A lot of people would say there's not a John Stockton without Malone. I'm not so sure about that because he made everyone around him better.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I think that's why I put him so high on this list. And, I mean, look, you said that when you think 90s players, you don't think Stockton, how he doesn't look like he belonged. He'd be the first to tell you that he didn't feel like he belonged.
Yeah.
Like, everything he overcame in the league and, like, with the Olympics and even in college, like, he always had to prove himself. And I think that's what impresses me so much about Stockton. The thing I love about him, he never changed. He's still wearing those tiny ass shorts even in the early 2000s. It's just like, and you're right, he was a little bit of maybe a prick on the court, but I think that's what made him so good. It was just having that edge and not backing down.
Well,
from the
think
Gary
about how
Paytons.
consistent he was too. Like he played at a high level for many seasons. You could almost argue he played at a high level until he retired.
Yeah.
I don't remember really a big drop off with his career.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, he's one of those guys that was smart enough to get out when he knew, like, hey, things are going to decline here in the next year or two. I should call it a day now.
Right.
Which has got to be the hardest thing for any person in sports to do, is to know my skills are not going to be the same. I got to walk away.
Well, I mean, shoot, he's like 40 when he walked away.
I know, but he could have played another 2 or 3 years.
Really could have.
He could have had 14 and like 7.
Honestly, I think Malone bolting the Lakers probably had something to do with that. He might stick around one more year. But with Stockton, what impresses me so much, and it just kills me that he didn't win a ring. It just kills me because he'd be higher on this list easily because he's the all-time leader in assists and steals. But like, if he just gets one title,
I agree.
Then we might be talking about him in top 15.
Well, it's weird too because when I think about those era
in a small market.
Yeah, well, super small market, right? But a very loyal market too, though.
Oh yeah.
When you think about those teams, like it's what you got: the Spurs, you have the Suns, you have the Sonics, you have the Rockets, right? And you have the Blazers, because the Lakers weren't anything really until Shaq went there. So I'm talking like late 80s to mid 90s, right? For the most part, like they made the finals 2 years?
2 years in a row,
right?
Yeah.
But out of all that, you would think that they would have been in the finals maybe 4 years. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the thing that kind of makes me wonder, like, and those teams were weird. The Utah teams were weird.
Yeah.
I mean, Ostertag, and, they had some guys where you're just scratching your head. Howard Isley, Shannon Anderson.
Chris Morris, Brian Russell.
You know what I mean? But they got there twice. If he's in the East, I'm real curious.
Well, look, remember the East was not easy back then. In the
No,
90s.
but I think in the early mid '90s, it was when Jordan left.
Yeah.
That 2-year window.
Yeah.
Because it'd be interesting. Like think about Utah versus Houston.
Right.
You think Utah could have beat Houston in '94? Like if Utah was in the East, the Knicks almost beat them, took them to 7. John Starks shoots better. Knicks win that.
Think of how much depth some of those teams had compared to the Jazz, though. Like outside of Stockton, Malone, like what do you have? Because
Mark Eaton.
Hornacek, yeah.
Right.
But they really just had some freaking dorks, man. Like Adam Keefe, Jeff Foster, Greg Foster. And like
yeah.
John Crotty. Are you kidding me?
I went to school with John Crotty.
Oh my god.
Yeah, actually not to school. He lived in the same town as me. He went to the Christian Brothers Academy. I did not go there, but Crotty came from my hometown. Jeez. No, you're right though. Like it's and that's what makes, in a way, you kind of have to go. Yeah, he kind of does belong where he's at, because you're right. If there's no Stockton and it's Malone and somebody else playing the point, I don't think it's the chemistry those two guys had together. But you take Stockton out, I don't think they win like they win.
No,
you take Malone out, I don't think they win either. But I think it's easier to replace Malone than it would be to Stockton.
Which is crazy to say. But yeah.
It totally is, right? Absolutely. So we're going to go 22. 22 is Elgin Baylor. You want to talk about a beast. Like, his numbers in his prime are insane. He's averaging 35 points and 18 boards a game with almost 5 assists. The 5 assists is almost, to me, is almost as impressive as the 18 rebounds. Who's putting up those numbers? 10-time NBA first team. A knee injury took away part of his athleticism, but he's still putting up 26 and 10, which is insane to think. You got a bum knee and you're still putting 26 and 10 up. He's not talked about in a lot of basketball circles when you get up to the upper echelon of players, but I really think he should be. Absolutely makes my list. I wouldn't know where I would put him, though, number-wise, and I'll kind of defer to you on that.
Yeah, he's tricky, man, because he was so ahead of his time. Yeah, he was an outstanding player. He really was. Just on the boards, the scoring, like you said, the assists. He was great. And I might upset a lot of people when I say this, but he might be well placed. A lot of people might have him a little bit higher. But look, he doesn't have a ring. He doesn't have one title. And you're on some of those great Laker teams that went to the finals so many times against Russell. And here's the point that I'm going to get at. This is going to kill me to say, but it's like, you go all those years losing to Russell. All those years, in the year that you retire, that's when the Lakers beat the Celtics in the finals.
Interesting, right?
Yeah, and so many people, I guarantee you, even like Jerry West and their teammates wouldn't say that he was the issue. They won't say that. But
it makes you wonder, right?
It makes you wonder. I'm not saying he was like a bad chemistry guy or a bad guy in the locker room by any means, but he might have just kind of just not been the right fit in that system.
Right, the right peg, for sure.
Yeah.
I have a question for you because I'm interested in this. So we're at, 22 right now? And this will be an interesting question because as we go through this list, there'll be a validation or not. Do you feel like from this moment on, every player should have a championship? Or does that need to be top 10?
I was going to say this, but I wanted to kind of review my list. Just off the top of my head, to be in my top 25, I feel like you need a title.
Right.
Like in my top 25.
Because there's going to be a couple on this list that don't have titles that it would be very hard not to put them in the top 20.
Yeah.
Karl Malone is the guy I'm thinking about right now.
I know.
Right.
And that's why I caught myself earlier, because then I thought of Malone and Stockton. I was like, maybe it's top 20. I'm not really sure, but
or like Barkley too.
Yeah.
Right.
I feel like here's the difference with those guys. Malone and Stockton, they're in a small market.
Right.
All right. They went up against Jordan. They just didn't have anything around them. Same with Barkley. Like, Barkley was the guy. He really didn't have
that 93 Suns team, though, man.
I know.
Marley, KJ. I mean, he had definitely people around him.
Yeah, for sure. But, I mean, he was only there for 2 years.
Right,
you know?
right.
So, I guess my point with Elgin is everybody talks about how stacked those Celtics teams were. How stacked were those Laker teams?
Exactly.
Jerry West. I mean, you had Chamberlain towards the end. I mean, you had a lot of Hall of Famers on that team also.
Right.
And I feel like if you're that great of a player, because everybody thinks Elgin was, and you're with Jerry West,
you got to transcend. You got to transcend.
You got to beat him once.
Yeah, and it's that, like, I'm gonna use a baseball reference for people that are into baseball. It's like I'm a Yankees fan, and when Mattingly retired, the next year they won their first World Series in quite a bit of time, and that's one of those things you have to think: was Mattingly the person that was holding them back from that or not? I mean, I just think Mattingly retired at the wrong time. I think if he stays one more year, I think they win with Mattingly no matter what. Yeah. And that's one of those other things you have to think about. Is like, if he stays the extra year, do they win with him? Right. You know, is that time where the chemistry, everything's right, or is it he's the guy that just is the cog in the machine that doesn't make it work to that, to where it needs to be? See,
for me, it opened up the lane a lot more for guys, and because when Elgin got it, it was kind of like the Carmelo effect, Yep. I feel like there's a little bit more movement without him, but I mean, I'm not taking away from him because he's such a great player,
right?
But here's another thing, because I do this with all the players that I really question. I look at what they've done outside of the NBA, and he doesn't have those NCAA titles. And as an executive, do you remember him as an executive?
Mm-hmm.
He's with the Clippers, and they were the laughingstock of the league.
Oh, for at least 15 years, 10, 15 years.
The whole time he's there.
At least.
The whole time he's there, and some people might just be rolling their eyes right now and turning this podcast off of me saying that, but it is true. It's just like, how much of a winning mentality do you have?
He was there for the Olo County pick, right?
I think so.
There you go, right there. Well, an executive too, it's like you have to put the pieces together to make the team work, right? So it's not about just drafting people, because a lot of times drafting is a crapshoot.
Yeah.
Like, you really don't know what you're going to get, right? Somebody gets the money and they're like, I'm cruise controlling now. Some people, you get on the team and they're that number 1 pick or top 10 pick, and they just don't jive with the rest of the team, and it just doesn't work out. But as an executive, your whole point of being an executive is making that team run and run efficiently. And those Clipper teams were so bizarre. Oh, yeah. Lamar Odom. I mean, it's like every time. Didn't you feel like in like the early 2000s, like late 90s, didn't you feel like it was like, okay, next year's the year the Clippers turn the corner?
Yeah, it's just like we rode their potential for so long, and then you look at, we're like, oh shit, Darius Miles is 30. Like,
you know what I mean?
There's the potential now.
It was like every season you're like, all right, this is the one. They got Piakowski, who's a good outside shooter. They got and it's like, oh, they got Olo County now, so then they got the big man, and then he doesn't do really anything, and then it's like, then they just keep falling down and falling down and falling down. Probably one of the most interesting stories, because people don't look at the Clippers as a bad team now, right?
I know.
But if you know your history, they were really bad for quite some time.
An absolute joke, yeah.
21, I'll let you take 21.
Bob Pettit, I agree with this. I might even have him a little bit higher. Just the 11 All-Stars, 11 All NBAs, the 2 MVPs during the Russell era. That's what it really stands out to me, is that he got 2 MVPs during like the Russell Chamberlain era. 2-time scoring champ. He's got an NBA title, and it's against Russell. So to me, that's also a big one, that you won in probably the most difficult era to win, because that was ran by those Celtics teams and the Chamberlain team. So that really stands out to me, and he was the guy for that. He was the guy. He was incredible. He's got 4 All-Star MVPs, only matched by Kobe. He was a great player, averaged 26 and 10. He had a 28 and 20 on the season, 31 and 19 on another. He won at all levels: high school champ, SEC champ at LSU. The guy's amazing, and I think he's really overlooked because of Chamberlain and Russell. I feel like if you take just one of those guys out of the picture, he's like the face of the 60s. He was incredible.
We got 20 at John Havlicek, and I'm going to let you take, because he's a Celtic, and he's probably one of the most famous Celtics, so I'm going to let you talk about him. But I'll tell you right now, with all the stuff I've watched on the NBA, he's definitely deserving of where he is, and he could even sneak in a little bit further up the list, in my opinion. He's super respected. Anytime you hear people talk about the golden age of basketball back then, you always hear them mention his name.
Yeah, I love Havlicek. I think he's extremely underrated, in my opinion. He was just so consistent throughout his career. Just his numbers are just like identical for, solid like 11, 12 years. And one of the best defenders of all time. He's 8-time all defense. He's always, diving on the floor. His motor was just unbelievable. I mean, if you want to talk about guys with a motor, he's the cover boy for that. He's an 8-time champ, and a lot of people that say, oh, he rode Russell like a lot of people do. He's got a finals MVP without Russell in 73, 74, so he proved that he could win without him. And that's what makes me okay with putting him a little bit higher on the list, is the fact that he went out, got one without Russell, and was the finals MVP for that. And he's just got so many historic moments. He really does. NCAA champion at Ohio State with teammates Bob Knight. As funny as that is, teammates with Bob Knight. But so he does have a title at the NCAA. So it just shows he's a winner, not just winning on those Celtics team. He won at other levels, and I mean when you play as hard as he does, that shows. And he invested a shit ton of money into Wendy's, and I respect that. They've got some
crazy.
Good burgers.
Those little spicy nugs. The original Nug Lord.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Number 19, you knew we were going to have a head scratcher. We went through way too many picks before we'd have the head scratcher. Dirk Nowitzki, to me, the first thing out of my mouth and I think I was texted you. I was like, huh?
Yeah, you did.
That was the first thing I was going to, look, I love Dirk, and let's be honest, he's probably the best Euro player. I mean, of all time in the NBA, I would say he is. I think if Sabonis came over sooner and didn't have such issues with his knees, we would say Sabonis was the best Euro NBA player of all time. But Dirk, I mean, what can you say about Dirk in terms of consistency? He was unbelievably consistent. Legit 7'2", I believe. Could hit from three, had a great outside shot. But 19, I don't put him at 19. And when you look at his career numbers, they're really interesting. And look, the last couple of years, he wasn't the same player he was. So you always got to remember that stuff when you're looking at career averages. Sometimes I almost want to chop off the last 2-3 years of anyone's career, because if he's a role player or he's not playing much, it's really going to dip into their averages. But his career averages are 22.3, 8 boards, 2.6 assists, almost a block, and almost a steal. If you're 19 on this list, I better be seeing like 26, 27 points a game. I should be seeing 10, 11 rebounds, especially if you're 7'2". I get he was more of an outside guy. But if that's the case, give me like 5-6 assists. Give me like 2 steals a game, maybe. His ultimate season is kind of what we were talking about in a way. 26.6 points a game, almost 10 rebounds a game, 3.5 assists a game, 1.4 steals, and 1.5 blocks. And I have to wonder, why did that change? Why is that such a drop off from your career numbers to that, which I don't get. 19's too high for me. He's definitely on my list for sure. Like I said, best Euro player. I put him in the high 30s.
Yeah, I think 19 is just a little bit high. I think if you're going to be this high, you just got to have one more title. I think if he had one more title, I'd be totally okay with this. Or maybe another MVP, just something. Like, there's just something about the resume that has him a little bit too high. I just don't put him over Havlicek, Like, I can't put him over John Havlicek. But look, he's done so much for, like, European players coming on over. I mean, he really kind of broke the barrier for that. And if you think about guys trying to find like the next Michael Jordan, or trying to find the next Shaquille O'Neal, there's a really long stretch in the draft where we're trying to find the next Dirk Nowitzki.
Completely agree with
it's
you.
It's like the Nuggets, like, oh, let's draft Nicolas Skidishvili. He's gonna be the next Nowitzki. And I'm serious though.
No,
like,
I know you are.
And like, we're Andrea Bargnani. They're like, oh,
Yep.
he's the next Dirk, and it just seemed like every single year.
Darko.
Yeah, every single year there's like that new European guy that, oh, he's going to be the next Dirk.
Here's something interesting, right? After that pick, and let's say 2 years later, when people are like, okay, he's going to be legitimately an NBA superstar for the next decade, I wonder what the percentage was on how many more Europeans were picked in the first round, because there wasn't a lot. I mean, when you think about it, and I'm not talking about being picked in the first round because I know Drazen wasn't, but like you had Drazen, you had Kukoc, you had Sabonis. Those are the three that, yeah, those are Stojakovic. There's guys that I think of like, okay, you had those guys, but you're right. Dirk was the guy that it was like, okay, I think it's safe now to realize that the European style of the game can translate to the NBA.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, people were bombing those picks at first.
I know.
Like Zarko Chabarkapa. I mean, there were like a lot of guys where they just saw 7 foot. They saw you could shoot a little bit. And they're like, well, let's ride with it.
Well, that's how the game was starting to change, right? I think with Nowitzki too. The more I think about this, like he's your first legit 7-footer that's shooting like threes at a good clip. Like he's the first guy that he's your stretch. He's your first legitimate Euro stretch. Yeah, for sure, in my opinion.
Yeah,
at that height.
But that title he got against LeBron, though, I mean, he carried that team on his back. So I'm not mad at 19. It just does seem a little bit high. Yeah. But I mean, he's got so many scoring records. I'm not going to read all through them right now, but he's got so many scoring records. I think he's 6th all time in scoring. And just the barriers that he broke down for some of these guys coming overseas, I think you kind of have to look at that and be like, wow, this guy really changed basketball. Like, he's really what made the stretch 4 like popular.
He might be my Paul Pierce, where like in the next 5 years I go, okay, 19 makes more sense.
Right. Yeah.
I just think it's a sticker shock right now where it's like, wow, really 19? It kind of threw me a curve.
Yeah, but do you put him over Dwayne Wade? Because I know Dwayne Wade was in like 27.
Yeah. It's hard because they're two different players, which is hard to do, because
But the only reason I say that is they're both recently retired.
Right. And that's another thing, too, is like, I think Dwayne maybe goes up a little bit on my list, too, given 5 years. I put them closer together. How about that for an answer? So I don't have them 7 or 8 people away from each other.
Right.
I might put them 2 or 3 people away from each other.
That's fair.
But I don't know. I mean, I put them almost right next to each other, but you could flip-flop those guys, in my opinion.
Yeah.
18, the round mound of rebound, Charles Barkley. Unbelievably amazing for his size. I mean, he was legit 6'4". Okay, he wasn't 6'6" or 6'7" like they tried to make him out to be when he first came to the NBA. He was a legit 6'4". And to rebound like that guy did at 6'4" in the era that he played is pretty impressive. I only have one knock on Barkley, really, and that's him letting his weight get away from him. I mean, I think if you look at the Sixers pictures of Barkley, he's like yoked in shape, and then you see like the Suns and especially the Rockets. I mean, he looks like he's related to Oliver Miller when he's on the Rockets. It's just he takes care of his body better. He doesn't go out party as much because he was definitely known to party and throw people through windows and stuff like that. If he doesn't party and he keeps that shape, I think you could put Barkley in the top 10 because I do think things change if he keeps that shape. I think he develops at an even faster clip, and I think maybe he gets one of those teams over the hump if he's really, really in shape. That 92-93 Suns team, you've heard me talk about this all the way through the podcast. I think the team was so underrated. He was the leader of that squad for sure. His numbers too, if we can take a look at his numbers, and this is, like I said, this is why I like him over Dirk. 22 points a game, 11.7 rebounds, 3.9 assists, 1.5 steals. And you got to remember too, he played a couple of dud years towards the end. You cut that out, I bet you his numbers would be probably 24, 25, and 13. His ultimate season, he's 28.6, 14.6 rebounds, 5 assists, 1.6 blocks, 2.2 steals. I mean, those are big numbers. Olympic gold medal. He's a guy I'd love to see him get a championship. I really would have. I think he was an important part of basketball going forward too. He was the whole "I'm not a role model" type of thing. Really good buddies with Michael Jordan, and if you ever hear those two guys talk together, it's worth your time watching. Go on YouTube, type in Jordan and Barkley. They're pretty funny together. But yeah, I think, like I said, my knock on Barkley is if he stays in shape, he goes up the list for me for sure, because I think he even puts up better numbers and has even a more solid career, which is kind of weird to say because he had such a great career.
Yeah, I agree with you about him kind of letting his body go. And that's why I kind of feel a lot worse that Malone didn't get a ring, because that guy just stayed in shape his whole career.
Yeah.
And whereas Barkley, I feel like if he did put his mind to it and just stayed in shape, he probably would have that ring, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I feel like he would have if he really focused and took his body and took care of his shape and made that a priority. I feel like he probably would have got one.
Yeah.
But he didn't, and so I can't put him over guys like Havlicek. I just can't. Again, in my top 20, for sure top 20, I feel like you just need to have a ring.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about earlier, like, where are you at with that? And it's going to be interesting because as we go further, we're going to see more of the tinfoil Bleacher Report stuff that we had talked about in some of the other podcasts. So Barkley was a Philadelphia 76er, and look who's number 17, Moses Malone.
Yeah.
Here's a guy that history is forgetting, in my opinion. He came into the league at 18 years old. I mean, unbelievable beast. There's a decade you can argue where he might have been the best player in the NBA from 78 to 88. His numbers were outstanding. Imposing D, great off the glass, could score at will, was really productive, honestly, until about 3 years left in his career. So basically 20 productive seasons, especially, as a center. That's pretty impressive. Most centers don't have 20 super productive seasons. You hardly ever see that period. He's a guy where 17 seems right to me, but I really feel like when we talk about great NBA players, especially big men, he really does get left off that discussion, which I think is a travesty.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the reason why he gets left out so much is because he played for so many teams. Like when I think of Moses Malone, I really can't think of like what team that he was the franchise guy for, because he played for 8 teams or
right.
something?
I always think Sixers when I think Malone.
Yeah, I think Sixers or Hawks. I mean, there's just so many different teams. But he paved the way for a lot of high school guys, because he's really the first guy to come out of high school. And I shouldn't say he paved the way. What I should say, he's the first guy to successfully do it.
Very successful, where they made them think, okay, maybe I can come out of high school and do this too.
Yeah. I think this placement's really good, and he's got the finals MVP. He's got 3 league MVPs, which a lot of people forget. I mean, he was dominating the league. And again, it just comes back to the thing. I feel like it's because he played for so many different teams. And I think that's the one knock that a lot of people have on him, is that he bounced around the league quite a bit. It doesn't really matter so much to me, because he is a finals MVP. He's got the championships. He's got the season MVPs.
Look at his ultimate season.
Yeah.
31.1 points per game, 17 rebounds, 2.2 blocks.
Yeah. I know. And I feel like he'd be a lot higher on this list if he just even played for just 2 or 3 teams.
You know what? I agree with you too, because we're both like that, where we like to see the guys that we consider superstars stay with their teams and just basically hold the fort down, go through the bad weather, get to where you need to get to. I think there's some guys that jump from team to team to try to find that success instead of building the success within. And I feel bad for certain players. I'm going to use an NFL reference like Larry Fitzgerald for the Cardinals. That guy is an amazing player, amazing human being. He's been to 1 Super Bowl, and he's just been stuck on crap Cardinal team after crap Cardinal team, but he's never pushed for a trade, never asked for a trade. An amazing community member in Phoenix, in Arizona. I always think of him as the Phoenix Cardinals, but it's just a shame to see that, he doesn't get the ring, and he probably will not get the ring. And you think about Malone jump through all those teams, I can see why. But at the same time, when you just look at those numbers and how productive he was, it's so hard to leave him out of those conversations.
And I'm not so sure Moses demanded trades. I don't really know the whole background on that. I mean, it could have just been a bunch of trades. I'm not really sure.
Right.
But
how do you trade him that much?
I know.
Right?
Yeah.
He's that good. You trade him that much?
Yeah.
I never understood that.
But he does have 2 high school state championships. So he won on other levels. And fun side note, my dad was a high school All-American with him his year in high school. So
nice.
That was pretty dope.
That's awesome. Number 16, we go from Moses Malone to Karl Malone.
Another
tin hat, right? So, all right, Malone and I don't know. I hate Karl Malone.
What?
I'm just not gonna. I can't stand him. I really feel like he ruined, Magic having a couple more seasons.
That's true.
I hate that. I can't stand that. Obviously he's probably one of the most efficient power forwards of all time. I mean, he 25 and 10 is in his career is beyond impressive. He's an underrated passer. People don't give him the credit for how well he passed. You know what I mean? When the ball go into him, I feel like he was very aware of the game and how their system worked. Very fluid for his build, which a lot of people don't talk about either. I mean, the guy looked like a pro wrestler. And obviously he sort of was later on, which is hysterical. But, he really was fluid for his size, which, a lot of times if you look at especially early 90s NBA, if a guy was 7 foot tall and his name wasn't Kevin Willis, he wasn't built, really, when you think about it. You know what I mean? And, the other thing, I think 16 is kind of almost perfect for him. He can go a little higher, he can go a little lower. How many times did you hear Stockton to Malone?
Right.
Your life. If you watch basketball, it's all. If you watch a Utah Jazz game, Stockton to Malone. You heard it all the time. Those guys work together, like we talked about when we talked about Stockton, peanut butter and jelly. Like I said, 16 could be perfect. I still hate him, but there you go.
Yeah. Well, as much as you hate him, he's almost signed by the Knicks or the Spurs after his year at the Lakers. So
did Knicks almost signed him after the Laker year?
They almost signed him. Yeah.
Oh, thank God.
I know, and then he just decided to retire instead. But he was almost a Knick.
Thank God.
But I think it's a little high just because I do feel like you got to have a ring to be in the top 20. And Bleacher Report has been ripping dudes this whole list for playing with other stars and everything. What about Stockton? Stockton made Karl Malone.
Yeah.
And
stayed the whole time.
Yeah.
The whole career.
And it's just funny that they rip all these guys, but not somebody like Malone. I feel like they just kind of pick favorites on this list, and Karl's clearly a favorite.
Yep.
But he was awesome, man. He's so consistent, and he took care of his body his whole career. He played till he's, 39, 40. I hated that he went to the Lakers.
Me too.
Just a rival,
That whole thing, because didn't they get Peyton the same year? Wasn't it it was Malone, Peyton, and then who was the other guy they got?
I think it was J.R. Ryder or Brian Russell, wasn't it?
It was wasn't there another superstar on that team, or it was just?
Kobe and Shaq.
Well, right. I felt like there's one other guy that was like, "Hey, I want to come along and win a ring." And I can't remember who it was.
Mitch Richmond.
Yes,
Yeah,
there you go. I knew it was somebody else that had a good career.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of hurts, especially because it's a ring grab. Yeah. It's like when he's got a year or two left. It's such the ring grab.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But what would you do? I don't think I would personally, but I'm not in that situation either.
But second all time in scoring, and first all time in free throws made and attempted, and then 8th in rebounds. Nate Thurman's 11th, by the way, and he's not on this list. Just thought I'd throw that out there. No Nate Thurman. Just
it's so amazing.
Oh my
so
God.
Amazing.
But our boy Detlef Schrempf was drafted over Malone by the Mavericks. Malone thought for sure he's going to go to Dallas, and our boy Detlef, who's in the top 50 on this list.
Well, he's from there too, isn't he? Isn't Malone from Texas?
Yeah, I think, that's why he was shocked. He's like, this.
That's amazing.
Big Germans getting ahead.
Where did he go to college? I can't remember.
Louisiana Tech.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. He was. Like I said, not a fan of him personally, but the numbers don't lie, and that's what's weird about him being okay. So here's something interesting. We're gonna go right into 14, but before we go into talking about, 15. Excuse me. Before we go about talking about 15. Here's my thing, and you're kind of a homer in terms of Celtics, so who knows what you're gonna say, but do you really put Garnett over Malone?
No.
Right, I don't either.
No.
And that's another thing where I'm thinking to me that's why I think this list is really flawed. It's it's obvious that they're just in a way just kind of throwing stuff together when they get further down the list, because it's I don't know, if you put those two guys together, to me it's almost obvious that Malone has to be higher.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And look, KG's amazing. That guy. Here's the thing. So let's talk about Garnett, right? I said in my notes, you can't put him over both Malones, Moses and Karl, and Sir Charles. I think all three of those guys have to be higher than Garnett. The thing I love about Garnett was his intensity. And I think once he grew into his body, because you remember the first year or two, he was a stick.
Yeah.
When he grew into his body, it was like, forget it. I mean, forget it. He was dominant. He was a leader. He was an intimidator. He basically changed how the power forward position was played in the NBA. He was tall enough to play center, and I don't know if he really played center much.
He did in Boston once he got rid of Perk
Okay.
in Brooklyn, but that's towards the end.
But every other place, when he was in Minnesota, he was definitely a power forward for sure.
Yeah.
Like I said, he's too high on the list, but for me, he was a great player. His career numbers kind of. You'd like to see the points a little bit higher, but when you're playing with Marbury, I could see how he's not going to score a ton. Like Marbury definitely had the Carmelo black hole thing going on. So he has 18 points, 10.2 boards, 3.8 assists, 1.3 steals, and 1.4 blocks as his career. His ultimate season, though, is kind of where I would have loved to seen him been a little bit more. But like when you're going to teams like Boston, you're sharing a lot of, the numbers, to be honest with you. So his ultimate season, 24 points, 14 rebounds, 6 assists, 1.7 steals, and 2.2 blocks. That's incredible. And that's like I said, be pretty hard to keep that up, especially with the 6 assists playing power forward. That's, amazing. But I would have loved to have seen him be more in the, 24 points, maybe 11 boards a game, maybe 4 assists. I'd love to see the blocks stay at about 2.2, and I feel like his block number should have been higher.
Yeah, he's a freak athlete and he's long. He really was long. But I'm with you. This is too high. I don't put him over Carl. I just don't. Look, he was so important to Minnesota. Just that whole city being with the Timberwolves and that MVP year. There was a stretch. If you want to just look at primes, he might be top 10 on this list. In their primes, he was great. But when you look at careers, because this is what we're doing, it just doesn't impress me over a Karl Malone that stayed so consistent all the way up until age, 38.
Right.
Whereas Garnett did take a little bit of a dip. But he was so important to Minnesota and Boston. I feel like he, next to Paul Pierce, is like the most important Celtic of all time. Because he changed the culture.
What?
Yeah.
What did you just say?
After the Bird era.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
okay.
after the Bird
Continue.
era. Thank you for correcting me.
All I heard was second most important. I was like,
No, so after the Larry Bird era with Paul Pierce.
You know what? I totally agree with you on that. There's who else? You're not going to put Anton Walker there. It's a little shimmy. No.
Hell no.
No, you're right. Who's the better player than him?
Yeah.
Celtic-wise.
And it's not even about who's the better player. He just came in and changed the culture.
Completely did.
Like he made them winners. He made them take pride in the defense, and he just made them professionals.
God, those teams were bad before him too.
Yeah,
when you really think about it,
they were really bad. But he's got the gold medals too. Like he's won like everywhere he's gone. The team gets better, and you're right. He's just one of the most intense players of all time, and I love Kevin Garnett. I just can't put him this high.
If we had like a top 10 intense players,
he's
list,
number one. Easy.
No,
yeah,
Jordan's one.
Jordan can't be one on every list, can he?
He can be one for that. Jordan, when you're punching players out in practice and you're, Jordan, just go back and watch the '92 Olympic practice between him and Magic, basically. Yeah. Jordan's one. I'd say Garnett's two for sure.
Yeah, Garnett's up there, and I guess what I mean by intense, just like practice habits and like pre-games. Like, I've seen him play live so many times, and there's just nothing like
scary,
it.
Right?
Scary
Good.
Yeah.
Scary good. Number 14, I got a problem with 14. Number 14 is Olajuwon, and to me, he needs to be way higher on this list. 14, no, I'm sorry. I get the love for Shaq, but my eye test tells me that Hakeem's better foul shooter, better outside game, more post moves. You let him get position on you, and it was easy to for him. Great defensive player, great passer out of the double teams. I like my centers to have a 10 to 15 foot jump shot on top of what you need to play the position. He gave you that. He's another guy, in my opinion, who changed the way the position's played. It made it more like not just like hanging out in the low post, scoring that way. He really made you guard him. And once he had space on you, you were in trouble. You saw the move he put on Robinson. That's going to be an all-time highlight. He just had that fluidity, and he could, pull you out 5-10 feet from the basket. And then he had speed. He had stuff that most centers did not have until him. And you can say, Robinson, you can say they were close together in that sense, but man, no, he by far, I mean, if you look at his career numbers, he had 21 points a game, 11 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, and 3.1 blocks, okay? Now, he definitely had some clunkers towards the end. The whole Toronto thing was a bad decision. But his ultimate season, 27.8 points a game, 14 boards, 3 assists, 2.6 steals, 4.6 blocks. That's dominating. Yeah. I mean, 4.6 blocks on top of everything else he's doing. That is a dominating ultimate season. In my opinion, and this is going to make people's heads turn and bring the hate mail, I don't care. He's better than Robinson. He's better than Shaq. He's definitely, in my opinion, the best center that played from 85 to, 97, 98. Hands down. And you know how much I love Ewing. He is definitely the best center, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think he's definitely the most skilled and talented center at that position, but I still don't put him over Shaq. I know you're going to hate me for that. But that's a debate for another time. That's a debate for another time. And look, he's incredible. He did change his center position. He really did. And he's got the dream shake. He's got every post move you can think of. And the great Pete Newell is quoted saying he's got the best footwork I've ever seen from a big man. And it's true. His footwork was incredible. But look, drafted over Jordan, we got to give him a little bit of a knock for that, right? I mean, I would. It's kind of got that James Worthy, Patrick Ewing effect as the number 1 pick. It's like if you're drafted, like we give Sam Bowie so much shit for being drafted over Michael Jordan, rightfully so. But
Bowie's interesting though because he was amazing in college.
He could play,
and really. Like, have you seen that 30 for 30 on him?
Yeah, it's incredible.
You get a better understanding of like that guy should have been a lot better, and his body just betrayed him.
Yeah,
really.
The one thing with Olajuwon though that is impressive to me, and we're wrong in one of our previous podcasts. Drexler wasn't there for both Rockets titles.
Oh, he wasn't?
No, so Olajuwon got one without Drexler.
And then Drexler the following year.
Yeah.
Okay, so Drexler was there for the Orlando Magic finals, and not the Ewing. Because Ewing was 94, the 94 and 95 season. And then the 95.
Drexler was there for the second one.
Okay, so he was there for the Magic one then.
Yeah, so you should know that since you're a Knicks fan. But
yeah, I know, right?
But
I still just see Starks clunking when I think about that.
Yeah, that's really all you needed to watch for that.
God.
And with Phi Slamma Jamma, I mean, they electrified college basketball too. So I do give him that. He's definitely ahead of Robinson.
Thank you.
People will be pissed off about that, but he just is. Like, the difference with him and Robinson, he got his title without Drexler the first time, but he's also the guy on both those teams.
He was.
Whereas Robinson wasn't. He needed Duncan.
Yep.
And I know, like, all of his other career, achievements are outstanding, but not over Olajuwon.
Completely agree.
Yeah, so I'm with you, but I don't put him ahead of Shaq. Shaq changed the game. That's for another argument.
Another top 10 list we'll be doing. So 13, David Robinson, and my first notes are nope. That was the first thing I typed. Nope. You can't have the Admiral over Hakeem. I'm sorry. You didn't watch basketball in the 80s and 90s if you do. I truly believe that. I mean, Robinson was amazing, but Duncan is what brought those titles to the Spurs, in my opinion. His list of awards is like a CVS receipt. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. But everything drops dramatically once Duncan shows up. Points per game drop almost 8 points per game when he shows up. Rebounds go under 10. Blocks go from 3.3 to 2.4. So that, I think, shows not only how dominant Duncan was right off the bat, but it shows that his numbers went down quite a bit, showing to me that Duncan is what was needed to get to that next level.
Yeah, he's also aging, though, in all fairness.
He is, because he did the naval thing, which people forget too.
Yeah.
So he didn't come right in from college into the NBA. I mean, he was definitely, because he did, I think it was 2 years in the Navy before he came to the NBA.
Yeah, and I think he led them to the Final Four, though.
The Navy?
Yeah, or Elite Eight. It was,
wow. He
led Navy deep.
I mean, look, he was a great player. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he had 71 in that one game. 71 for a center. That's pretty impressive. He won the scoring title.
It wasn't impressive.
For that time?
No.
Give me another center that scores 71.
No, let me tell you how.
Tell me.
So that was the final game of the season.
I remember watching it. Yeah.
And
the ball just went through him the whole game.
It was against the Clippers.
And the ball went through him the whole game. I remember that.
Yeah, and the Clippers were the worst team in the league. They had like freaking Tony Massenberg guarding him, and they were feeding him so he could get the scoring title.
Yeah, I remember.
And Jordan wasn't in the league.
But still, 71 for a big man.
Look, 71's impressive, but I mean, come on, they were completely.
They were.
So no, I'm not all about that. I'm not about that.
I love it.
And it's against the Clippers.
I love it.
In the last game of the season.
I love it. I can't deny how great he was, but like I said, I can't put him over Akeem. That's just, to me, insanity.
Yeah, I'm the same way. And some of these things like the scoring title, I just don't view as a scoring title because that was completely.
But remember, though, there's 81 other games he played.
No, I know. He was dominant, no doubt, but I don't agree with that, and it was against the Clippers. I don't think it was very impressive to me. He's got a quadruple double. That's impressive to me. But it was also 10 rebounds, 10 assists, 10 blocks. So it's like, were you just trying to get exactly 10 to get that quadruple double? Right. So there's just so many things on his achievements where I'm just like, I don't know. But he was great. I just don't put him ahead of Olajuwon. I'd probably have him like 15 to 20 on my list, I would think.
Yeah, I kind of would have him there too when I thought about it. The Big O is number 12.
Oh, can I say one more thing?
Sure, please do.
I just saw this. This is going to make you mad. Bleacher Report quotes on Robinson. Cutting to the chase, Robinson was simply better than Olajuwon ever was.
Is this guy 18 years old?
I know.
I mean, really?
And look, the head-to-head match on them, Olajuwon owns Robinson.
I know.
So look.
I don't even know. Tell the numbers. I don't even need to know them because I watched a lot of those games when the two of those guys played.
Yeah, like Olajuwon averaged 22, 11, and 3 against Robinson compared to his 19, 11, and 3. And Olajuwon has 11 30-plus games, with 4 of them being 40-plus against Robinson.
Wow.
And then in the playoffs, Akeem... Yeah. In the 95-96 playoffs, Akeem's averaging 35 points, 12 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 blocks, shooting 56% from the field.
Which is insane, too, because he wasn't just dunking.
Yeah, and that's compared to Robinson's 23, 11, 2 and 2,
which is still great numbers.
45%.
Yeah, but against each other, I almost want to just send that clip to Bleacher Report and just say, whoever's the 18-year-old that said that that Robinson's simply better, please just watch this clip.
Yeah, I just had to point that out since they specifically said cutting the chase, Robinson is simply better. It's like, no, look at the playoffs, and that was in both of their primes.
Yeah. Oh, just watch a game. You could just watch. I mean, like, those statistics are amazing to listen to. But if you were around at that time and you watched the game, you would definitely know that Akeem was definitely the more dominant player of the two.
Yeah, and Robinson is also part of that team that got bronze in South Korea. So
yeah, see, there you go. Well, that was the team that allowed us to have the dream team, right? That allowed us to have the pro players play.
Yeah, I think so, because guys like Robinson couldn't get it done. Just kidding.
Number 12, Big O, Oscar. First guy to average a triple-double, which is crazy because he averaged 31 points a game when he had that triple-double season. You're seeing Westbrook do that now, and I'm like Harden's kind of tinkering with that, and LeBron's got 3 straight games with a triple-double averaging. So that might not be as an impressive as a feat as we go through the next 10, 15 years of the NBA as it keeps changing. But no one did that before him, and it took until, 2017 or 16 for Westbrook to do that. So that's pretty impressive. I think 12 is perfect for him. I can't put him any higher. I want to in a way, but I can't do it. His numbers are, like I said, they're very impressive. Yeah. That ultimate season where he gets a triple-double, it's 31 points per game, 12.5 rebounds per game, 11 assists. His career numbers, 25.7 points per game, 7.5 rebounds, 9.5 assists. So he tinkers with that triple-double, his whole career essentially. He definitely is a guy that I think 12 may be perfect. I can't put him any higher.
Yeah. And again, Bleacher Reports comparing eras, and they talk about Oscar. They say in today's NBA, he wouldn't average a triple-double. Just like, you can't possibly calculate that.
Nope.
Like, he would have found a way to pad his stats.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and it's like some of the teams we get to play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So that's just silly to point out. But, I like where he's placed. I might have him a couple spots lower. You're right. Nobody did that back then. But do you think how common the triple-double is today that Oscar is going to start dropping a little bit more?
I totally do.
Think so?
I do because, I feel like Harden's going to get one. I feel like he's going to average one. I really do. I think Westbrook's going to get another one.
Yeah.
I really do. And then you get guys like, you know who else I can see do it? Ben Simmons.
Yeah.
I can see him averaging a triple-double. There's just certain guys. I don't think there'll be any big men. You know what I mean? I think it's going to be. I think you're going to have to be a small forward to do it. I believe. Shooting guard, small forward. I can't see a center doing it. I can't see a power forward doing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely think he drops down on that list because of that. I could see him at 15 in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
From 12.
Or even possibly lower.
Yeah, but I don't think under top 20.
I like Oscar, but he kind of sours me just a little bit, and I don't know, just that title that he got, it was towards the end of his career, and it was totally Alcindor's team, you know. And so I guess the part with me with Oscar is we give Westbrook such a hard time for like padding stats and averaging a triple-double. It's like, he's supposed to get assists, he's supposed to score, and he's hustling for rebounds. Like, why does that matter? So it's like, why should it matter for Oscar, But it's like, if we're going to be hard on Westbrook, we got to be hard on Oscar.
I agree with you on that.
And it's like, he never really won during those triple-double days, and then once he got Alcindor and he was older, that's when they win. So to me, that title, it's not as difficult as some of these other guys, and I think that's why he slips a little bit on my list. And if we're going to give guys like Russell a hard time, we got to hold this guy accountable too.
I respect that 100%. Folks, this is definitely our longest podcast, but you know what? I knew when we were getting closer to the end of this list, we were definitely talking a lot about where these placements were. I hope you enjoyed us today. We had a lot of fun debating this list. Debate with us. Get a hold of us on our email. Get a hold of us on social media, and let's talk about these lists because we had a ton of fun putting them together. We're going from 11 to 1 the next time you hear us. So if you're subscribing, that'll be in your inbox real soon in your podcast inbox, and you'll be able to listen to it. So on behalf of Zach, this is Eric. Have yourselves a wonderful weekend.